Chapter 5. When Marcel got home from school the next day, his mother asked him to take another loaf of bread to his aunt and uncle. Marcel was not in the mood to do the errand. He was tired and wanted to read the new comic book he had traded with a kid in school, not hop on his bike. But the look on his mother's face made him realise it was pointless to protest, and so he waited while she wrapped the loaf in a clean white dish towel. Then she handed him another parcel wrapped in the same way. It had a familiar and delicious aroma. "Panda piece?" he asked. "Yes, in case you get stopped." He took the packages and put them in the basket of his bicycle, which he had left in the front of the bakery that morning. It had been raining, and he had not wanted to ride in the rain. The sky was clear now, yet he didn't want to ride, though he hated to admit it, even to himself. He was a little bit afraid. Before, he'd thought he was just delivering bread and cakes. Now he knew better. There was probably a message inside the loaf. What if a soldier or gendarme took the loaf and found it? But then Marcel looked at the other parcel and the freshly baked panda piece. He would offer that to anyone who stopped him. That's why his mother had given it to him, to keep him safe. And she was asking him to do this for a good reason. At least he thought it was a good reason. They were working against the Germans who had invaded the country. That was a noble thing to do, right? The thought made him feel a little better. "Don't stay long at your aunt's house," she said. "I want you to come right back." "I will, my mum." Marcel got on his bike and pedalled down the street until he had left town and was on the open road. The trees overhead had lost all their leaves now, and only the bare branches remained. He saw a rabbit dart across the road and scurry off into the high grass. Usually, he liked this ride. He'd fantasise about the Tour de France, pretending he was riding in it. These empty roads would be filled with adoring fans. He could almost hear them as he rode. Today, it was different though. He could not be lulled into the familiar fantasy, and he kept looking down at the basket with the 2 covered loaves. When he came to the bridge, he recognised that soldier he'd seen before, and he slowed down. The soldier recognised him too. Marcel came to a stop. He was scared. What if he wanted the bread today? "Do you have cake?" the soldier asked. Marcel nodded. With slightly shaking hands, he handed the soldier the panda piece. The soldier inclined his head and took the package. When he pulled out the cloth to reveal the aromatic loaf inside, his mouth turned up a small smile. "Go," he told Marcel, in a strangely accented French. Marcel didn't waste any time getting back on the bike and speeding away. He got to his aunt's house about 20 minutes later and gave her the loaf of bread. Was there a note inside? He had not dared to check. Before he turned around to leave, his aunt handed him a worn shawl. "Please bring this to your mother." This was strange. His mother already had a nice shawl. Why was his aunt sending another? "I'll give it to her," as he put the shawl in his basket, realising it was made of 2 different kinds of material that had been sewn together. One side was bluish grey and the other light brown. There was room in between the 2 sides, and when he was far enough from his aunt's house, he stopped to examine it more closely. There was something in there, something that felt like a piece of folded paper. Instantly, he knew it was a note that his aunt and uncle were sending to his parents. Marcel sped back home as fast as he could. The guard at the bridge waved him through so he didn't have to stop. He saw his mother standing out in the street, like she was waiting for him to get back. Why? Did she think he wouldn't make it? "You got here quickly," she said. "Did anyone stop you at the bridge?" "Only when I was on my way there, but I gave him the panda piece again, and he didn't stop me on the way back. He even smiled, sort of." "I'll have to keep baking the cake," his mother said. "I just hope I can get the ingredients. There are always shortages at the market." "Aunt Marie Pierre sent this to you." He gave his mother the shawl with the note sewn inside. It took every bit of self-discipline he had not to blurt out, "I know what you and Papa are doing." But he didn't. If he told, they might not let him deliver loaves anymore. And as scared as he was, Marcel wanted to keep carrying the messages. It made him feel brave and strong and important. His mother just thanked him and draped the shawl over her arm like it was nothing special. The next day at school, Mademoiselle Babineau asked Delphine to sit in the front row at the desk directly opposite hers. This was a place of honour in the classroom, and although Marcel had a seat in the first row, he'd never been asked to sit in that special desk. Paulette, the girl who had occupied the place before, did not seem happy about giving it up, and everyone was talking about it at recess. Marcel did not join the cluster of kids who were in the yard, but he stood close enough so he could hear. He didn't see Delphine anywhere. "The new girl thinks she's better than everyone," Paulette said. "That seat was mine. I'm the best one in the class. Just look at my marks." "I'm not so sure," said Gwilym. "She seems pretty smart to me." "She's not smart. She's pushy, that's all. She thinks she can waltz in here from Paris or wherever and just take over." "Sounds like you're jealous," said Gwilym. "Who, me?" Paulette was indignant. "Why would I be jealous of her? I just don't like her, that's all." Paulette had a high, whiny voice. Marcel turned away and went back into the classroom by himself. There was Delphine sitting at her desk. "How come you're not outside?" he asked. "Recess isn't over for another 15 minutes. "I don't feel like it," she said. She kept her head down and did not look at him. Maybe she'd heard something, he thought. Maybe she knew. He went back outside to play with the other kids, but his heart wasn't in it. He was glad when recess was over. Later, when school was dismissed, he saw Delphine walking home alone. He wanted to talk to her, but he thought about what Paulette had said and he was afraid. If he got too friendly with her, the other kids might start teasing him for that too. There was already enough that he was picked on for. Still, she knew so much about cycling, and she was a really good rider. And he even felt a little sorry for her. Marcel waited until Delphine got to the end of the street and turned the corner. Then he rode his bike through the tiny alley beside Madame Girard's flower shop so he could meet her on the other side, out of sight of his classmates. What he did was his own business. No one had to find out if they became friends, did they? And he was going to make sure they didn't. She looked surprised to see him waiting, but not unhappy. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Looking for you," he said. "I wanted to see that scrapbook again." "All right," she said, "but we can't go to my house." "Why not?" "It's because of my mother. She's not well and she doesn't like me to have anyone over." She seemed nervous when she said this, like she was lying. But why would she lie about that? "We can go somewhere else," he said. "I'll show you a good place and you can go home and get the scrapbook." Marcel walked his bike as they fell into step together. Soon they came to an abandoned barn that was near the edge of the town. He pushed open the door and stepped inside. "Is this your secret hideout?" She walked around slowly, looking at the empty stalls and piles of pale, dried out hay. "Sort of," said Marcel. He and Arnold used to come here, but Arnold complained that it smelt, so they had stopped. "It would be a safe place to meet Delphine." If you want, I'll get the scrapbook. If you want to get the scrapbook, I can wait here." "I'll go as fast as I can," she said. "I'll even run." Marcel was about to offer her his bike, but then he thought better of it. Arnold or one of the other kids might recognise it if they saw her on it, so he said nothing and she left. He sat down in the straw and started to get comfortable. It seemed she was back in no time. "How'd you get back so fast?" "I took my brother's bike," she said, and wheeled the red bicycle inside. A shaft of light from a high window shone brightly on the silver bell. "And here's the scrapbook." She set it down and they began to look at it together. The smiling winners in the pictures looked so happy and so proud. Marcel could imagine how they must have felt. "Do you think the race will ever start up again?" "If the war ever ends," Delphine said. "It's been going on for a while now." "Too long," said Marcel. "Way too long," she agreed. They continued to turn the pages and chat until the light from the window faded and the barn grew dim. "I guess we should go now." Marcel stood and brushed the hay from the back of his pants. "Au revoir," she said. "Goodbye." "Meet here tomorrow?" she asked as she hopped on her red bike. He nodded. "Au revoir." He got on his bike too and swiftly pedalled home.